All right, welcome back to today's video. Today I have an important topic to talk about, and that is things that I see, four things that I see that make the process more difficult. Now, it could be the fitness, it could be diet, nutrition, all of those things. Just kind of the umbrella, four things I see that make the process more difficult. So, the first thing is not having a plan. So the Stoics say that no winds are favorable if you don't know to which port you are sailing to. I can't remember exactly who said that, but obviously it was paraphrasing. But essentially, the quote is pretty much accurate. If I don't know whether I want to build muscle, or I'm trying to lose fat, or I'm trying to gain strength, or if I'm training for a 50-mile race or an Ironman competition, it's just really hard to gain any sort of traction. And yes, you can start a general fitness plan and you'll make some progress, but overall, I see people, they lose motivation very quickly. And when you have an end goal in mind, or let's say you're trying to run a 50-mile race, then that sets up your training plan, but it also just keeps you on track, no pun intended, on the days where you wake up and you're like, I don't feel like doing this. And why am I doing this? And you can say, oh, because on, January 25th in 2025, I'm going to be running 50 miles. And so it's just easier in the day to day when you have a plan. There's nothing really beyond that, except it just gives you something to focus on, especially on those days and you just don't want to do anything. Now, the second, and this is a surprising one, but the second thing I see that kind of just makes the process more difficult for people is having a bad attitude. Let's say somebody is in a fat loss phase and they're just constantly complaining about being hungry. And that negativity just starts to bleed into other areas of your life, into your mindset. And it just kind of paints everything that you have going on with this, with a negative perception. And it's something I have been very guilty of in the past, where I just complain from the moment I wake up about being hungry and like why am again like coming back to like why am I doing this, and then my workouts suffer and then my energy levels suffer. And it's something that thankfully I don't deal a lot with pertaining to my clients. Just trying to think through that, sorry about that. But yeah, just having a bad attitude, it just paints your whole life in this negative light, and it's just not worth it. It really isn't, especially when it comes to something that's already difficult. Yes, there's going to be some hunger. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of fatigue. Yes, there's going to be some energy loss there. But you don't need to make it more difficult by constantly complaining about it. The third thing, it's pretty common. I think people, they think they want it, and then when the rubber hits the road, they have found out that they really didn't want that goal, and it's you just don't really want the goal. Maybe it's just the external thing. Maybe it sounds great in practice, and then when you get in the process, you realize like, oh, this is going to require some change, and this is going to require some concerted effort. And here's the thing. It's okay if you don't really want that goal. Like, that is fine. In my coaching practice, the majority of the people I deal with are parents, working professionals, and very, very busy. And when you try to work those things, it's not impossible, but it does require some shifting of schedules and creating some new habits and replacing some old habits, and that can be overwhelming. I like to think I simplify that process, and I feel like I do, but that still requires change. And so oftentimes people can find that, like, when they get started and in a goal, towards a goal, working towards a goal, that it's like, hey, this was going to require something that I just didn't realize. And now that I have that information, I don't know that I want that goal, and I don't want to do what it requires to get it. And so some reframing, spending some time and looking at your schedule of the next 3, 6, 9 months, and really being very honest with yourself and saying, hey, like, maybe this goal isn't for me right now. And when you try to still pursue a goal that maybe you just don't like, it just can bog down the process because you're constantly second guessing yourself and if this is the correct thing for you. Now, the fourth thing is, it's controversial, and it kind of ties into just really not having all of the information, or just wanting another goal because the goal you had chosen was, maybe you just didn't understand what it was going to take. But the fitness and nutrition game, it isn't a 90-day fix. Like, if you embark to change things in 90 days, you certainly can do that. Absolutely. 100%. I wholeheartedly believe that. But if you believe that it's just a 3-month thing, that's the end game, I see a lot of people get into trouble there, because if you cannot do this forever, and yes, things are going to change, you'll find some space and maybe you will be able to work out 5 days a week, or maybe you will be able to cook 95% of your meals at home. But if that changes, you have got to change along with it. And so I think people really do believe that there's this end game, and then it's kind of like it's over, but it's not. Like, we're creating this journey so that you can walk it indefinitely. So that all of these things that you're building, all of these practices, all of these new habits that are serving you, not only towards this goal, they're serving you beyond. And they give you a framework from which to build off of when you don't have a specific goal, or your goal changes to maintenance, or maybe you go from fat loss to a muscle building phase. And let's say you have your first kid, you still know how to adjust things. Or let's say you go from kid number 1 to number 2. Or if you don't have kids and you're switching jobs, and it just is going to require this other level of discipline, but you take everything that you've learned and you shift it into that new endeavor. But the end game, and I generally like to say, like, my journey, I'll have it all figured out, I guess, on my deathbed, and then, like, my life is over at that point. Sounds very morbid, but I feel that I will constantly be learning, I will constantly be refining, I will constantly be updating my plan. And I think the best plans have some very key components in place, and you build off of that. But those are 4 things that really just make the process more difficult if you haven't figured them out. So, number one, you just don't have a plan. Number two, your attitude around your goal. Number three, not really wanting the goal. And number four, believing that it's just a 3 month thing, a 6 month thing, a year thing. Those all can just bog down the process, but also just make your life more difficult. This is adding unnecessary stress, in my opinion. But if you have found value in that, please hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. You can look for me at an Instagram and Facebook, and I will put my handle in the description. Please leave some comments. I love reading those. My name is Aaron Sanchez, and look out for some future videos.